I have a wonderful electronic invention I want you to see. It looks something like this.
Welcome to the CTO studio. I am your host, Etienne de Bruin. CTO studio is where we chat with CTOs building amazing products, building incredible teams. Have you chatted with a CTO lately? My name is Etienne de Bruin. It's not ATM with an N. Although I do say that when I get really desperate. Someone's like, can you spell that for me? So when I realize that the relationship is going to be very short-lived and I'll never see that person ever again, I say I'm ATM with an N. But my name's Etienne de Bruin, founder of 7 CTOs, super passionate about people and programming, and especially people who use technology to build companies that create jobs and creates prosperity. So I want to spend my life investing in those types of people. And one of those types of people is sitting right next to me, Evaldas Alexander, otherwise known as DAS. Not to be confused with direct attached storage, but it is a name that we've come to love and we call you by. So DAS, welcome to our first ever podcast.
Great to be here. Sorry, I don't have a funny story about my name spelling ATM.
You can say that it's not direct attached storage.
I'll remember that.
So DAS, we're in San Diego. We have the lights on us. We're at a round table where Eric is over there making sure we sound awesome. So we want to talk today a little bit about just kind of where you're from, how you landed in the role as CTO. We want to chat a little bit about technologies that you're excited about, maybe some recent news stories that move you. Promise our audience not to keep you busy longer than like 20-ish minutes. So that means I have to do no talking.
We will need to speak fast.
And I have to talk less. So why don't you tell us just in a few minutes, like where are you from and how did you land in your current role as CTO?
Sure. So as you can tell from my accent, I was not born in San Diego.
You're from New Mexico.
There you go. The part of New Mexico called Lithuania, which is the name that apparently I'm mispronouncing in English, which is ironic.
What is the pronunciation?
Well, I'm just noticing that when I say Lithuania, people are trying like, oh, and they pronounce it slightly different, like, oh, that country. And I'm like, yeah.
I just had that look on my face, I think, the same one.
Right.
Lithuania or not?
Well, that's the thing. In Lithuanian language, you pronounce it completely different. It's Lietuva. So for me, it's just an English word.
So this is a quick question for you. Do you remain true to the original pronunciations when you're in the States, or do you adjust it for the benefit of Americans?
I actually do. So, for example, my first name, the Lithuanian way to pronounce it is Evaldas, and yet that's not as easy for people as Evaldas. They just
so then you adjust it.
Right.
Yeah, my wife and I constantly have arguments because our last name is pronounced De Brain in South Africa.
ATM brain.
And so she, come hell or high water, is De Brain, De Brain, De Brain. And I'm saying, listen, the Americans don't get that. We should be De Bruin. So I don't know. I guess being true to your original pronunciation is a good thing.
I think it depends on the context, and you have some fun.
So born in Lithuania.
Right. Right. Yep. Lived there all the way till 2006 when I moved here. Back in Lithuania, back in high school, I was torn between going into computer science or being a lawyer. And the latter was appealing because at that time, Lithuania was a brand new country with all institutions still being created, with a lot of opportunities to go into politics with a law degree and really have an impact. And so I ended up enrolling into law school, which is a bit different from here. You right after high school, you can start at the law school. You don't need to go to college before that. And kind of got into youth politics, started working as a volunteer assistant for a Senate member. But then after a year and a half, I realized that my passion is not really with law and memorizing rules that, at least in that case, were prone to change every few years in either case. And so I have dropped out, enrolled in management information systems studies in the same university as the law school was. And at the same time started selling websites to Lithuanian companies. Once I sold my first website, I had to figure out how to build it. So ended up...
Your first website was built in?
It was in PHP.
PHP?
Yes.
The pre-hypertext protocol.
That's correct. So I ended up hiring a fellow student from the same university, just from actual computer science.
So what year?
faculty.
What year is this?
That's 2003.
2003. Okay.
Right. So he built that first website and many websites after that one. And with each project that we did together, I got more and more into programming. Initially, just trying to understand how things work, maybe trying to fix some tiny issue that cropped up. And I liked doing that. And then when I moved to the States, I started just as a developer and slowly worked.
How did you get into the States, by the way? The Homeland Security wants to know.
Well, right. So I came here to study.
Okay, great. On an F1 visa, or
I don't even remember what that was.
Just for the record, Das
right.
is legal. I'm just messing with him.
Yes. And then I happened to fall in love with a Hawaiian girl, got married, had kids, and now I'm living here.
It's kind of Eric's story, isn't it? Fell in love with an American. My wife is South African, so it took us 10 years to finally get our green cards. So it was tough. It was tough. Then, so let's just fast forward. So you're currently in a tech lead role, CTO of sort of a ventures company, which does multiple things and has sort of found its niche in, scraping technologies and stuff. But just tell us quickly, how did you go from a tech person with getting your hands dirty in sort of coding to now, I think you're managing remote teams and you are the CTO. So just that jump, just how that happened.
I think that jump just happens by taking ownership. We have a project, I need help, therefore I need to figure out how to hire people, and now I need to figure out how to work with those people, how to manage them, how to make sure that they're being productive, how to make sure that our collaborative efforts are resulting in code that is manageable and readable. And
so that jump, that's interesting. Did that jump happen because you took ownership first, or was trust given to you first and then you had to take ownership?
I think both of those factors play out side by side. You show that you care about what you're doing, you get more trust, and that creates a virtuous cycle. Great.
And so just tell us about the company and sort of what you guys are building.
Right. So the company is called Simplexity Ventures, and we have several businesses. The main two ones are RankPay, which is search engine optimization service. We were the first performance-based search engine service, so you only pay if we truly improve your rankings. And
you only pay if RankPay really improves your rankings.
That's correct.
Amazing.
We do ask for 6-month commitment because SEO takes time, and anybody who gets told that they can have their rankings improved in 2 weeks or a month should be worried.
Is SEO still a thing?
It is a thing, and I feel that as long as there's a way to search for things, even if typing on your phone or your computer goes away and we all talk to Alexis or some other voice assistants, I feel as long as there's a choice for the algos that pick what gets served for you when you make a request, there's a room for SEO. It might be drastically different. The factors that will make you rank might change quite a lot.
So what is your advice? If I'm a startup, for instance, I have my marketing website, I have my app website. I have a couple $100 a month probably to launch some kind of ad campaign. But if I was to come to you and say, well, what is SEO today? Is SEO today really search engine marketing, or is it search engine? Can you really optimize based on, I remember back in the early days, we would make sure our tags, our HTML tags were a certain way, and the words you used in the title had to match the words in the link, had to match the slug. I mean, it was pretty crazy. But if I was to ask you, hey, I'm a startup, I want to get the word out there, what is SEO today? What are the couple things that come to mind for you?
So the aspects that you have mentioned, they still matter to some extent. Basically what you mentioned, that's on-page SEO, and you definitely should pay attention to that. You probably might come across a lot of small websites that are built based on the principle, hey, we have 10 pages, each page will have the title that will match the menu item, right? So you go to About page, and what you have in the title is just word About. Or maybe it will have company name prefixed to that, right? So every single page starts with my awesome website - About Us. Is that smart from SEO standpoint? No, not really. You should put more effort into it. Will doing that guarantee that you will start ranking? No, that's more like a stepping stone. You should do that. That's a smart thing to do. It takes not that much effort, but that's not end all be all. Other things that you need to care about is content. So it's awesome if you can create content that is relevant.
But this sounds like early 2000s to me still. So are we still in that world where content is important, frequency of publishing is important? Does the search engine robots or machines still look for that?
They still do. Again, that's not as simple as, hey, as long as I create 100 pages of content, I'm good. There are other things. How relevant is that content? How much of that content shows up in social media, right? Are your blog articles that you are publishing, are they being shared by people on Twitter, Facebook, Google+?
So not necessarily your article, but that's the theme. So let's say, for instance, let's use blockchain. Because blockchain is such a hot topic, if I post some random article on my rinky-dink website, but it's about blockchain, are you saying that sort of automatically is more interesting to search engines than if I was to post on some other topic?
Well, is your website about blockchain? That's the main question.
Okay.
And if your website is not about blockchain, but your article is written where there's true connection between what you are doing and how blockchain impacts your business, then maybe. But it's all about creating content that is relevant to what you are doing.
Okay, so as a startup founder, you're telling me still the basic rules of SEO apply. RankPay gives you the unfair advantage. Can you give us sort of 2 or 3 things without giving us the secret sauce, but just that you would tell a founder to still do in order to help with their rankings?
Right, so there's no magic bullet. I can give a couple easy things to do that are just no-brainer. Make sure your website is HTTPS, so it should default it. Make sure your website loads as fast as possible.
So HTTPS meaning that there isn't even an HTTP, it's just...
Well, it should just forward to HTTPS.
Okay.
You do not want to lose people who, for some
and
reason...
then speed of loading, absolutely.
Prepay your domain for more than just 1 year in advance. That shows that you are serious about your business.
So they look at domain expiry.
There are about 200 factors, and I'm just giving you
But
right.
that's fascinating. Okay,
well,
so
that shows you that you're not somebody who just decided to sell, some drugs online, Viagra or something like that, and your goal is to just get in, make some money, and a few months later you don't care if that website
what
is gone.
about subdomains?
So that has changed a little bit. I think general sentiment from experts in the community is that you do not want subdomains. And that used to be different. You wanted subdomains, and right now there's more push. Hey, if you have blog.domain.com, just move that to domain.com/blog.
And then do you have, this is fascinating, by the way, do you have an opinion on, I read something recently, that, like the 7CTOs.com website was on Squarespace. And then someone, I think maybe you told me, Eric, or someone, that sites that generally are on Squarespace have a negative effect on your SEO. Then like Wix, Wix and Squarespace sort of the same category, but then your WordPress site, might have better SEO just by virtue of the stack or the platform that it's hosted on. Do you think that that's real, or do you think search engines don't care really about the platform you're hosted on?
I'm not familiar with that specific topic. I would be curious to hear the arguments. Are they saying that, look, their HTML is weird, or they might do some things like... So Google actually cares even about your JavaScript and CSS files, because that helps them to render your website properly. And so for the longest time, people would exclude JavaScript and CSS from the robots file. And yet, right now, the consensus is you do not want to do that. You want to enable Googlebot to render your website exactly how it should look like to the actual human.
Okay, and that goes for single-page apps as well then?
Well, I think it goes even more for single-page apps, right? Because
let me ask you, let me refrain. Are single-page apps good or bad? I mean, can single-page apps be indexed properly? Right.
So for quite a while now, Google is able to index JavaScript files and execute JavaScript and navigate single-page apps. So that by itself is not a deal breaker.
Okay. Because I think you said something which I haven't really heard before, which is Googlebot rendering your site.
Right. So, some people used to cheat by, let me stuff some keywords and then hide them with CSS. And so obviously Google needs to counter that by, well, let's see how that page truly looks like. And if you have some text with 1 pixel font size somewhere, probably that text is not that relevant.
Fascinating. So someone comes to RankPay and says, we want to, employ your services. I'm assuming there's just a checklist of things that you manually do just to make sure the site complies before you even start with any other strategy?
More or less, it's a little bit more streamlined. The way the process works is step 1, you just enter your domain. Step 2, you start entering your keywords, and we start giving you suggestions of other keywords that you might be interested in. Step 3, you just create an account, enter your credit card, which does not get charged at that point. But if we will improve your rankings, then we'll start billing you on a monthly basis. However, we will not bill you, and we will not even do SEO until your keywords are activated. And before your keywords could be activated, they need to be approved by your account manager. And your account manager will make sure that you're not trying to sell drugs, or your website is not about gambling, betting.
And this kind of leads into my next question, which is, a service like RankPay seems to be in a category of services that could be considered a scam, right? Because you always get these ads that are, we can help you be number one, or and I think I've seen, for my own sites, there's often, is XYZ a scam, or is it? So do you have a lot of work that you have to do to sort of earn the trust? I guess that's why you're going with the don't pay us until you see the results approach.
That is exactly right. We are in the same boat as you. Unless your rankings improve, we just spent a lot of money on doing SEO for you that we will not be able to recoup. So it's to our benefit to improve your rankings, because that's the only way we will get paid.
Love it. Great. So tell us about your role as CTO. So you're managing remote teams.
That's correct.
You have a relationship with your chief executive.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about your challenges as CTO potentially, and maybe some tips and tricks and tools that you've adopted to, that maybe you didn't know in the beginning that you sort of has become part of your tool set today.
Right. So my biggest challenge for the longest time was, and I feel like I'm still learning, is how to lead people into taking ownership. And the challenge stemmed from, I feel like I kind of naturally do that. I just care about things. So if somebody gives me a task, I kind of feel like, okay, now I either truly need to figure out how to get a task done, or I need to let the person know that, look, this is not going to happen. Sorry, I can't take on this task. And I'm realizing that by default, a lot of people are not operating that way. But they could be mentored, they could be trained. And so for the longest time, I would go through the cycle of hiring a developer who looks great at the job interviews and code tests, and then giving him tasks and watching him to get those tasks done, but then stop short of caring about the bigger picture. Maybe the task description that I gave them was not fully complete, right? And so sure, they got it done, but we are trying to achieve certain objective by doing that task, and yet they didn't really care about
True,
what
that is such a host of factors that I can think of that people try solve this maybe through full-time employment. They solve it through autonomy. They solve it through maybe not hiring juniors, but hiring senior developers. And yet I feel like none of that is really a silver bullet. It's always a fine combination of how you as CTO empower and treat your team, their successes and their failures.
I 100% agree with that. It feels it's all about communicating and really telling them that this project that you're working on, or at least the smaller piece of the project, you're the owner of it. It's up to you to think about it. It's up to you to tell me if you think something should be done differently. And I even tell them, look, you don't need to ask my permission to do something. Just go ahead, create tasks, prioritize them as you think they should be done.
So these are with your remote teams?
Right. And my job is to catch if what they're proposing is not either not urgent enough, it should be moved to a later sprint, or maybe it could be improved. And if I fail at that, well, then yes, they are able to do that without me explicitly giving an approval. Granted, we are not talking about things such as, hey, let's change everything, let's go to a different stack without having a conversation before that. But if you just have a good idea about how to make our deployments better, or how to make our website load faster, you have the green light to create a task, assign that to yourself, plan when that should be done. And it's up to me to either give you advice on why maybe that should be reconsidered. Okay.
And so the remote teams, that's interesting because I feel like when I work with remote teams, you try and spec the job to death so that there is no room for ownership. But you're coming at it differently, which is I still want to give you a sense of ownership because that's when you're going to give me your best work, even with the remote team. So does that come from having a long relationship with the same team? Or is this how you would treat any remote worker? How do you do this?
Right. I think the part that should be spec'd is what your limits are, what your expectations are. So you should establish your communication boundaries very clearly so that it's clear how you will get in touch with that person, how often they will be giving updates to you, how often they need to update the task management system, and how exactly you will work in your task management system. Should they use certain code linter for their code, what coding guidelines you are following, what kind of unit coverage you are expecting.
So basically giving them the sandbox.
Right.
But trying not to get too, draw clear boundaries, but still having to sort of let go in some regard so that they can sort of take ownership.
Right. And I don't feel that speccing it out to great detail and giving them ownership is mutually exclusive. You might give them a lot of details. You might give them also the reasons why those details are the way they are, just to give them understanding of why they're doing things a certain way. And that, again, opens them to thinking and proposing better solutions.
So are you working directly with the team? Where is your team? Or where they're all over, right?
Right. They're all over, and I'm working directly with them also, well, it depends on a project. For example, right now we have another project that we are working on where a developer that I've been working with for a year now is managing another developer that we have just hired 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Very good. So as part of, I want to go into the Rankpay a bit more again.
Sure.
So you've sort of become a student of scraping APIs and you're implementing. Is that part of the Rankpay value? Or the implementation in some way you obviously have to scrape sites to see how your client sites are doing.
That's correct. It's not something that our customers are really worried about or that they should care about that much, aside from knowing that they can research the keywords and see pricing and keyword opportunity in real time, as opposed to having to wait for an account manager to give them a proposal. So that, and then the fact that we will send you ranking updates. As long as that is happening, they don't really care about what we do under the hood. But yes, it's a fascinating area. Back in 2007, when we started RankPay, my challenge was that when I looked around, I didn't really find a solution that would just give me Google ranking data and other factors that would need to be checked in real time. And so we were forced into building our own solution for that.
And now in 2017 or 2018, sorry, the landscape must be very different. Are you?
Yes and no.
Are you tell me more about that.
It's surprising. Just yesterday, I had a long conversation with a company that sells API access that enables you to get Google ranking data, and they're really great into taking Google results page and breaking into all of the many components that it has. So you have your organic results, you have your local listings, you have your ads together with a placement, you have your inflow blurbs, you have your Google images and all that. They do a great job at breaking that up, right? However, they do not provide real-time searches. The best that they can do is, maybe 2-minute delay or 3-minute delay. And they used to provide that, but I would say year after year, Google is ratcheting down on trying to prevent scraping. And so at some point, they just kind of gave up and decided that they will not provide that as capability.
Is 2 to 3 minutes a big deal? Delay?
Yes. Our average keyword search that we are shooting for, at least, is about 20 seconds.
And why? Well, why is that important?
Because that's part of the sign-up process, right? So the more keywords the customer will search.
Okay, you're right. So that's, in other words, if you take too long to give the initial impression. Right. Okay, that's fantastic. Do you have any tools that you can suggest, open source projects out there that make scraping a lot easier and more feasible that you can suggest, that you can speak of?
Right. Well, when it comes to scraping where you need to run a JavaScript, probably one of the best options is Nightmare.js. You can also use headless Chrome browser.
H-E?
H-E-A-D, as in headless.
Oh, headless.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So those are your probably best options if you want to be able to run the JavaScript.
And is proxying is critical and IP blocking is a nightmare, I suppose, or?
It takes some effort. Basically, odds are if you will be scraping, you will end up having your proxy pool, and then you'll end up managing that proxy pool. And by managing, I mean tracking whether your proxies are up or down, and also tracking whether if they're being blocked, and then dealing with unblocking them, solving captchas or recaptchas.
And is this something that, there's so many reverse proxies and proxy services out there. Is this something that one could really use as a service, or do those services not encourage scrapers to use them, and therefore you have to have set up your own proxy infrastructure? Or
once you get to a certain scale, you might need to do that. But in general, there are a lot of services that will rent out proxies for you, and there are different combinations that you can choose from. You can get rotating proxies where every either 1 minute or 3 minutes you'll get a brand new proxy. And so depending on what you're doing, that might work or not. For example, if you're doing certain activity where you're supposed to stay on the same IP because otherwise it just looks weird, now you are either trying to time that change perfectly so that you don't end up doing your activity in the middle of the IP change, or some providers might claim that they will rotate exactly every 3 minutes, and then when you set up your own test, you'll find that sometimes that is not the case. So that's one way to go as far as managing your proxies. Just get a brand new proxy every X number of seconds.
Any proxy services that you recommend?
Dot,
Okay.
yeah.
Tell me just quickly, is Google still number one?
As far as market share, sure.
And that's what most customers want, Google.
Yes.
And do I want to improve my search engine rankings because I'm too cheap to buy ads? Or is that just...
I think it depends what you're doing. If you just started your business and you are still trying to find product market fit, and so you're not sure if you will end up pivoting, if you will end up changing your product quite a lot, and you just want to test that real quick, I think Google Ads, AdWords is still a great way to go, or Facebook ads. But if you already proved that your business works, and now you are ready to make investment for the long term, and you want to do SEO yourself, and then you might be looking at the results playing out in a year from now or so on, or you want to use a service like Rankpay where still you're looking probably at least at 2 or 3 months before you start seeing first real changes that impact you, and even more if you are trying to get to page 1, especially if there's a lot of competition. If you are at the point where you can make those investments, I think that's great.
I heard a fascinating statement the other day. The person who's a world leader in sort of content marketing basically made the statement that said you have to pay for traffic. There is no other. We don't live in any other world right now. If you want traffic, you need to pay for it.
Right. The low-hanging fruit of, hey, just leverage social media. That landscape is changing, and more you will just end up paying for traffic. But SEO, you're just paying for traffic, kind of over longer term by making an investment. And as long as you play it safe, it's probably making more sense than just spending money every single day. Depends on your business.
Let's wrap up. Do you have any questions for me? Just quickly, so some advice for any CTOs out there, maybe something that you've learned in working with your own CEO, what's worked for you and what hasn't worked for you. And then maybe some advice for lead engineers or developers who are sort of the first among equals, budging up against the management space. Do you have any advice or anything you'd like to tell them? So some advice from experience for the CTO and for the lead engineer.
Right. I would start with broad advice that probably applies in both cases. Study, read books, identify what are your problems, and read books that help you with that, right? So if your problem is hiring, I believe a book called A Solution is a great one.
Which one?
The A Solution. It has huge letter A on the book.
A Solution.
I think so. I will need to double check on it.
We'll put that in the show notes.
If your problem is that your people are stressed out and they're complaining that there's just too much to do, which often is the case, get them to go through Getting Things Done by David Allen. GTD. It just helps you realize, well, yes, that's life. There's always too much stuff to do. All you can do is have one inbox and prioritize.
What I love about GTD is just get that stuff out of your head.
Right. Yep.
And are there any blogs or feeds that you like monitoring maybe on a daily basis, just as you stay aware of technology and all that?
Hacker News so far is the best one.
Hacker News. Das, you were amazing.
Thanks for having me here.
You answered all my questions quite sufficiently. I could probably talk about search engines and scraping for days and days and days to come.
Let's do that.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Have you chatted with a CTO lately?